Shalom to everyone, and welcome back to another teaching for this week. And today we want to do a double portion again, the Torah portion Achrei Mot and Kedoshim, Leviticus 16 verse 1 to 20 verse 27. There is so much to cover within all these Torah portions that I actually wanted this week to divide the Torah portion in a part 1 and part 2. And specifically in part 1, I would like to use a short presentation to lay a foundation for part 2, where we will discuss some different concepts and why things were written, why some of these laws that we find in Achrei Mot and Kedoshim has been given. And I've always said in our community that any laws are not just given randomly, not even in a secular government. Laws are not given because they felt like it was time to give a law. A law is always preceded with a problem or an origin that necessitated for this rules or this laws to be put in place. But before we actually discuss that in part 2, I would like to just talk a little bit about Hebrew Gematria. For those who have been with me in the community knows that when I talk about Gematria, my intention is not to go into a mysticism or some idea that I am going to find something new, but I'll explain a little bit more later the Hebrew Gematria and why I sometimes look at this different things that come up in the Hebrew Gematria. So specifically Leviticus 17 verse 11, Vayikra 17 verse 11 tells us, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. So the life, which refers to the nefesh, and you'll see in this Hebrews ki nefesh ha-basar. So for the soul, nefesh is also sometimes related as soul. For the soul, in this case, the JPS translated it as life. For life, the flesh has given in the flesh, badam, in the blood. So for life of the flesh is in the blood. And when we're talking about the neshama and the nefesh and the ruach and various components of our soul, that would be for a later teaching, more in-depth teaching. But specifically, I want to concentrate on the concept of blood today and the Gematria. So for those who have been with me in the community for a long time, Gematria is not something I use to make a new theological statement and to discover hidden mysteries and to come up with new things that is not found in the text. If you read the plain literal text, the Hebrew text, and you look at the framework that's been found in the Hebrew scriptures, then Gematria cannot be outside of that. Gematria cannot be used to explain something that is not already written or clearly seen in the text. So Gematria is for me something like a watermark, and the same type of watermarks that's been used in banknotes. And I've used the American banknotes. For the ease of convenience, I found this picture on on the internet, but you can take any banknote from any country and you can lift it up and you can actually see there are some watermarks that you can find in this banknotes. Some of it's got metal strips and various things, and all these things combined actually ensures the authenticity of the note. And it's not really just the note, but the value of the note. And therefore, I use Hebrew Gematria in the same framework that I lift up, if I can say in this type of concept, I lift up the Hebrew scriptures and I look at the watermarks at some of these Hebrew Gematria that we find in the Hebrew scripture. And it gives me value, more value. It gives me authenticity or added authenticity to already what is written. And as explained, this cannot be outside the actual text and framework of what is written there. It is basically just a watermark. So I would like us to look at some of these watermarks today. And I want to start at the beginning of Scripture because I want to lay a foundation and then look at the different words that's been used and the gematria, the value system that goes with these words. So we start at the beginning, where in Bereshit 1 verse 26, God said, Elohim said that let us make, and there are various translations, humankind, let us make man. But the Hebrew word here is let us make Adam in our image after our likeness. So that gives us a bit of a I won't say a problem, but it's really food for thought. Is that if we are made in the likeness of God, and we know God is a spirit, God does not have a body, God is not limited, then if we are made in His image, then it means that somehow this body and what we see today is not completely in His likeness. So what does the text refer to here when it says after our likeness? And that's why I always, and the previous teaching, I always remind people that we are not a physical being on a spiritual journey. We are actually spiritual, placed in a physical body, and we are on a physical journey. And this is the image that God has given us, is that we have got this spiritual being within us that needs to grow, that needs to I don't want to use the word evolve, but need to grow in our spirituality in this physical body, in this physical world, so that we can become more like Him. And at a point in our lifetime, this flesh of ours, this body, will be laid down, and we will continue our spiritual being or our spiritual journey then on a different plane of existence. And this Hebrew scripture does give us some idea of, and it gives us some hint of what the spiritual journey will entail. So the main point is that Adam, the Hebrew word Adam, is made in the likeness of God. And I would like to look, but what is this likeness that the scripture refers to? So Bereshit 1:26 uses the word Adam, and I've put the Hebrew numerals. I've pasted that in the screen, so you can see Hebrew is not the same as English or any other language where we have a different numerical system to our alphabet. That the alphabet is also encompassed with a numerical system. So Aleph was 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and Dalet is 4. So if we would take the word Adam and we take Aleph, and we see Aleph is 1, and we take Dalet, which is 4, and then we take Mem, which is 40, we get to and we add those numbers together, we get to a value of 45. So there is basically this first level of Gematria, that where we actually take the physical numbers of the Hebrew alphabet, and we put numbers to it, and we add it together, and we get a number. But there is another concept called the Mispar Shemi method, where it is a full letter filling. The value of each letter is equal to the value of its name. So if we take, for instance, Aleph, which is 1, if we write it out in Hebrew, Aleph, and we count all those letters together based upon this numerical system, then we'll find that we get to a value of 111, which in itself is a different teaching by itself. 3 and 1, 111. It's perfect. Aleph. So this is the Mispar Shemi method, and why I explain this, because if we take the name of God, which is a Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, and we count it together, we get then the Yud is a 10, the Hey is a 5, the Vav is a 6, and we've spoken about that in previous teachings, where Vav is the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and we can find it in the 6th word in Bereshit 1. So it's also in itself has got quite a very unique meaning, and then Hey is 5 again. I know it's a lot of maths, it's a lot of detail, but if we take this Mishpar Shemi method and we spell out the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, and we count all these letters together, then we get to 6 plus 22 plus 6 plus 20, which gives us the number 54. And when we look at this, when we see something quite interesting, is that if we are made in the image of our Creator, then we can see in the Hebrew Gematria that we are a mirror image, 4, 5, 5, 4 of God. God has given us a spirit, a spiritual being, a neshama, which lives in a body, and then we've given a physical body in a physical world, and we are supposed to be the mirror image of the Creator on this earth, and what we do and how we live out, and our spirituality is aimed in changing our environment, is there to elevate the creation of God on a daily basis. So if you look at the background picture, I have a city there on a river, and we see that the real image of the city and the reflection below is what we find in this Hebrew Gematria, that Adam is the reflection of the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, the 5-4, in the image. And it is, for me, it is always amazing to see that if this if anybody would suggest that Hebrew is a man-made language, that there's no God in heaven or there's no creator of this universe, and we look at the construct of this Hebrew, it is so amazing that things that we can see things like this basically reflect what is actually written in a text. And we can see that God says, be holy because I'm holy. I am 5-4, be my 4-5 on earth, be my reflection on earth. Aleph, which is the one, and if we spell out the word Aleph, it is 111. It's an absolute 3 in 1, an absolute 1. Then we get the word Adam. So God, which is the source of life, which is the number 1, and the pictograph for Adam, or for the Aleph, is an ox, it's a leader, that he blew into the blood life, and therefore we were created. Adam was created. Now, very interesting, if we just look at another, just a little bit deeper, and we count this blood, this dam, this 4 plus 4 gives us 8. When we go back to when we just count the letters together for Yud, Hey, and Vav and Hey, we'll get 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5 gives us 26, and 6 plus 2 gives us 8. So it's another level of a watermark that we can find, that the new 8, the number 8 is a reflection of new beginnings. In this case, the blood, it's new, there is life, it's new 8. And we know that in the lower levels, or let's say in the deeper levels in God's name, there is 8, there is newness, it creates newness. And we actually receive this in the Gematria. So it's not something mystical, it's something that is already there, and we just have to put them together to understand that God is the giver of life into the blood, and therefore Adam has been created. If we look now, when the hay is removed from the name, as we've seen in previous slides, then we are remaining with a Yud and a Vav. So the letter Yud has a significant symbolism in the Hebrew letters, representing the concentrated power of God and the concept of descent. And these, I can give you the sources of where I find all this. It's not that I'm a Hebrew scholar, or that I'm actually at this moment just doing something and making something up. I do study and I find different sources, and we find that this Yud represents God, a concept of descent. So this hay, God descended something to this world, and I'll explain what we find. And in Hebrew tradition, the letter Vav, also known, you can spell it with a V or a W, depending on your framework, and from the Afrikaans language, the W is quite commonly used, has a significant symbolism. Vav is the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You can refer back to a few parashas back, where it was found in the 6th letter of Bereshit 1, between Hashamayim and Haaretz, Ve'et, where this Vav is the hook, which signifies the attachment and connection between what is heavenly and what is earth. And I would dare to say today that it's the hook between the mirror image between what is God in the heavenlies and man, which is the representation on earth. And this symbolizes the concept of joining things together and creating a unity. So if we take out the hay, we find that this is what's left in the name of God. That God, the Yud is a concept of God's descent. The Vav is a symbolization of God connecting what is heavenly and what is earthly. And what is very interesting, we take this hay and we add it to Adam, which is blown into Adam, and then we get the word Adamah, which means ground. Haaretz is earth, but Adamah is the ground. And we find that this hay, this what God has given himself of, goes into his creation called Adamah, and then he creates Adam out of the Adamah. And if we take the word Adamah and we count that together, we get 1 plus 4 plus 40 plus 5, and we get to the number 50. And does that ring any bells? Is there any significance to the number 50? Yes, there is. The Jubilee, Yovel in Hebrew, is a year observed once in 50 years. So it's a 7 cycles of the sabbatical years. And on the 50 years following the 7 cycles of the 7-year Shmitas, or sabbatical years, like the Shemitah year, the Jubilee is one in which no agriculture, Adamah, needs to rest. Work is to be done and the land is to lie fallow. The Adamah is to rest. That is absolutely mind-blowing to myself, to think that in the word Adamah, the number 50 is represented, and God brings a law, a mitzvah, saying on the 50th year, the Adamah needs to rest. Now, if that is not God representing himself in the Gematria, in the Hebrew scripture, then who is out there that can say there is no God, there is no creator of the universe? And who can say that Hebrew is just another language that have evolved? Now, if we take the Adam, the hay that comes out of the Yud hay and the Vav hay, I want to use 2 different concepts. Is that there is a candle in front of you and you blow the candle. In most, let's say 99% of the cases when you blow a candle, it is something, just wind that comes from the mouth, and you just blow out the candle. But if I ask you to blow up this balloon for me, you will go deep inside yourself and you will take a deep breath and you will blow that breath into this balloon, and you will blow it, and the essence of what is inside of you will be situated in this balloon. And while this balloon is closed, while it is intact, the essence of the creator of that blown up balloon is inside the balloon. And we find exactly the same concept here, is that when God took from himself, and he took the essence that was deep inside of himself, and he blew the aleph, blew into the blood. He created a living neshama, an Adam. Now the Hebrew, if we go back, Adam, so the life is in the blood by the essence of what came out of the Creator. So blood is so important, but the importance is the life that is in the blood. And without this blood, no living creature on earth are able to live. Every creature within a living being, where there is a nefesh refers to this life that is in the blood, and it becomes a living being, a living flesh, and nefesh. So all animals have a nefesh. Human beings have a nefesh, have this nefesh life force within them, as through this blood and this life that is in the blood. So if we revert back to the Mispar Shemi method, we give a value based upon the name that has been spelled, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. We get to, when we spell out Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, 6 plus 22 plus 6 plus 20, and we remove this Hey, this life force that God has endowed on man. We remove the 6, then we get to 20 plus 22 is 42. So somehow that does not correspond to the 44 of the blood. There seems to be a component missing, and we find that this missing 2 is represented in duality and plurality. We find that the Creator said to man, he said to Adam, it is not good for man to be alone. And therefore the missing 2 is being created in pairs of male and female and man and woman. And also we find that in a father and mother. This numerical value 44 that is in Dam, that God says to Adam and Eve, to Chava, to Adam and Chava, he says, you need to create offspring. The father of, if we count that together, is 2 plus 1 is 3. And we take mother, which is M, or Im, it's 40 plus 1. It gives us a total of 44. So the blood of father and mother, so the value of father and mother comes to 44, which is the blood, the offspring of your blood. And what is quite amazing is that the word child for Hebrew is Yeled. And if we count Yeled together, 10 plus 30 plus 4, we get to 44. So the blood of your offspring, 44. So we understand when we see at these different watermarks within this Gematria, within this Hebrew scripture, we find that there is life in blood. There is an importance in blood, that the offspring, the blood of the offspring, Adam is an offspring of the heavenly, because he blew within himself into Adam. He blew into himself into the blood, the life, and it became Adam. Chava was taken from Adam, and from those two a father and a mother comes together and they create a child, and within that child is the same blood life force, which is 44. So we understand that there is such an importance into blood, into why blood becomes an integral part in the Hebrew Scriptures. And therefore this will lay the foundation for part 2, which I will, as time progresses over the weekend, I will do part 2. But will lay the foundation for why God specifically said certain things within the few verses that we are reading. Now Leviticus, Vayikra 18 verse 3 say, "And you shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt where you dwelt, or of the land of Canaan to which I am taking you, nor shall you follow these laws." If blood is such a beautiful and life force and such a valuable life, I don't have the word, the life in the blood, then we understand why in the ancient Near Eastern cultures the enemy penetrated and managed to confuse and working within community with different blood rituals. And we'll see in the Parshat that we are not allowed to offer child sacrifices. It was not allowed because it was the occupants of Canaan, it's the occupants of Egypt. It was the things that was done within the ancient Near Eastern culture, to take that yeled, that child wherein the blood life force is, and you would sacrifice it to a demon. You would eat today, or not today, but I'll give some examples, but you would eat the blood. And there was some rituals where they believe that eating the blood of a certain animal will actually pass on the strength and attributes of that animal when you eat the blood. And unfortunately, it is not something that disappeared. It is within today, still within many communities, within the African tribes, in Kenya, the Maasai, they actually puncture the artery within the neck, and they take blood from that animal and they actually drink it, and they get sustained within it because there's iron in the blood, and they have explanation, but they drink blood. We understand in some of the even within the European communities, there is a dish called like the bloodwurst, where they actually take blood and they pump it into a sausage, and they eat the bloodwurst. And there are many examples today where blood rituals still exist, that child sacrifice still exists. Literally, child babies are sacrificed, babies are killed, their yeleds are offered to demons. So we understand that these blood rituals still exist. So in conclusion for part 1, the reason God is now going to give us, and we're going to outline some of those things within part 2 of this parasha overview. is that the importance is in the blood and the life that comes from this blood and the offspring that comes from this blood. And I'm using the blood as an example of rituals that came from the ancient Near Eastern cultures. But it is blood. There's not just blood rituals. There are other rituals as well that originate from the land of Egypt, from the land of Canaan, from the other countries around them, and therefore God gave this instruction: do not follow their ways. So part 2 will give us an indication why God has specifically given us certain laws, marital laws, eating laws. So I hope this has inspired you today, and looking at the Gematria and the wonderful Creator's fingerprint within this Gematria, and Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom. And I will be posting then part 2 after Shabbat.